everyone. I hope I'm audible. Good evening and welcome to Global Millennial
Recording in
MUN
progress.
Talkshow. We are delighted to see all of you here today, and I hope you are all in an excellent mood and are ready to gain lots of insights with us this evening. So on today's webinar, we will be covering the topic of action for climate empowerment, how to save our future with a spectacular speaker, Mrs. Eka Cahyaningrum, co-founder of Himba Raya Indonesia. First, I would like to express my gratitude for everyone as through your participation, this event was made possible. This talk show was held with the purpose to gain deeper comprehension regarding action for climate empowerment in our daily lives, since there's an increasing urgency and importance and much news about this issue. So we thank you for enabling us to create such impacts. Before going further, let me introduce myself. My name is Anastasia Jaslyn. You can simply refer to me as Jas, and I will be the master of ceremony and moderator for all of you in this talk show today. But before we begin, plenty of you have an abundance of questions in regards to the organizer of this talk show. We would like to give you a chance to get to know the Global Millennial Group a little bit closer. Let me introduce you to GMG. GMG is a one self-developmental platform that strives for equality, for quality education, and youth empowerment globally through various educational programs. We have worked with several international bodies as well as universities, as can be seen on the second slide. We also have reached over 300 partners so far. We have over 15 programs which have reached over 200,000 youth in 35 countries. One of our programs is Global Millennial Model United Nations, or GMMUN. It comprises two main branches, the MUN Conferences and the MUN School. To give you a short overview of how GMMUN is, we have a testimony from one of our delegates, as you can see on the screen. For more testimonies about GMMUN, you can also head to our Instagram at Global Millennial MUN. Well, before we wrap up this session, let me shortly share with you the siblings of GMMUN. Here, as you can see, we have Indonesia SDGs Summit, which is perfect for anyone who is interested in SDGs and would like to increase their essay and presentation skills. Next, we also have Big Global Indonesia, where we provide classes to improve their soft skills. We also have GM Scholarship, where we provide several options for scholarship and for anyone looking to gain extra knowledge about skills that will be useful throughout their journeys. And lastly, we also have Sebulan Menjadi. Next, I will shortly introduce to you the membership plans that we provide to ease your way in joining all of our programs. On the slide, you can see the benefits of each plan, which are bronze, silver, and gold, as well as the prices for each. It is a plan that you do not want to miss out on, so make sure to check it out after this talk show ends. So on the next slide, I would also like to give you a brief introduction to the GM store, where we also sell Global Millennial Group's official merchandise. Check the catalog on the link provided on the screen and snatch your favorite merchandise before it runs out. Lastly, we would like to share with you our very special referral code so that you can get a discount when registering for our programs. Register through join.gmillennial.com and use the code WebinarStripGMG to get your discount. And not only that, I have also one more exciting information for you. So on behalf of GMG, we would like to give a chance for you guys to participate in the GMMUN conference for free. However, to win these tickets, you must share your Instagram story during this webinar and tag at Global Millennial Group and at Global Millennial MUN. Then take the screenshot proof and submit it to the form that will be given. And the 5 lucky winners will be announced after the session ends in the Telegram group. All right, that is all for the info session. Next, we will officially commence with the event with an opening speech from the Director of Pre-Event Management, Mr. Yasar Reski Maulana. To Mr. Yasar, the floor is yours.
Okay, hello everyone, and thank you just for the opportunity. I would like hello everyone of the Global Millennial MUN Talk Show with the theme of Action for Climate Empowerment, How to Save Our Future. I hope all of you has good condition and always healthy in this pandemic situation. And let me introduce, my name is Yasar as the Director of Program Management for the Global Millennial MUN for this event. And I would like thank you to all of the participants who has high enthusiasm for this talk show in this night, and the great speaker will also come. And thank you for Kak Eka Cahyaningrum, who have been pleased to attend and will give the experience, also the insight regarding the climate empowerment. Last from me, keep up the spirit and hope everybody can enjoy the experience in the MUN talk show. Thank you, and I will give it back to the MC.
Thank you so much, Mr. Yasar, for the magnificent speech. Before we continue to the main session, I would like to remind everyone that the feedback form will be shared at the end of the session, and it will be closed today at 10 p.m. GMT +7 sharp. So make sure to fill it right after this talk show ends. Now let's get to the main event, which is the discussion session with our awesome speakers. So today we have the pleasure of being able to invite Mrs. Eka Cahyaningrum, co-founder of Himba Raya Indonesia, to be with us and discuss the topic of action for climate empowerment. And to start, I will be giving a short introduction of our speaker. Mrs. Eka Cahyaningrum is a co-founder of Himba Raya Indonesia, which is a non-profit organization that aims to raise awareness about environmental degradation and the need for solutions that support local communities in central Kalimantan, Indonesia. Himba Raya Indonesia also helps build local community resilience towards climate change through nature-based solutions. Such a remarkable speaker we have with us today. So, let's greet her. Hello, Ms. Eka. I hope you are having an awesome day so far.
Hi, Jesslyn, and hi, everyone. It's nice to be here. Thank you for having me here.
Thank you so much for being here, and that's very great to hear. Well, without further ado, let's start our session today. I have some main questions here which you can answer, and it's all related to this topic, and I'm so excited. And to kick off this session, I would first like to ask from Mrs. Eka, what are your thoughts about climate change as a whole?
Yeah, thank you, Jesslyn, for the question. So, firstly, I would like to thank GMMUN for giving me a chance to be here and learn together with all of you today. So, to answer your questions about my thoughts on climate change. So, recently I read an article from Forbes. So, the article is talking about a survey they did, and they say that almost 90% of the world believes in climate change. That means there are 10% of the world population who doesn't believe in climate change. Inside the number, like 38% of Americans think that climate changing is mainly as a result of human activity. 30% think that the climate is changing partly as a result of human activity, while 9% think that the climate is changing but not due to human activity, and only 6% say that climate is not changing at all. So that's to give you a broad view on what happened in the world and their view on climate change. I personally believe that climate change is happening, probably not all because of human activity, but humans are increasingly influencing the climate and the earth temperature by burning fossil fuels, cutting down forests, and farming livestock. As you know it, that this adds enormous amounts of greenhouse gases to those naturally occurring in the atmosphere, increasing the greenhouse effects and the global warming that we know nowadays are happening. I also believe that climate change has been blamed too much and built as a narrative that caused disasters such as floods and droughts. But I personally think that those disasters are not only caused by climate change, but also caused by bad land management and also the destructions of the natural ecosystem that we have. So the ecosystem functions are destroyed, and it creates the ecosystem vulnerability. That's why the impact of the climate change is huge and impacts different people in different areas, and also impacting the livelihood of the communities.
Thank you so much for the answer, and that's very interesting regarding the cause of climate change itself, and I truly cannot agree with you more. But can you explain in a more detailed manner regarding the impacts, about the practical impacts that is caused by climate change, especially because we know that there has been a rising of urgency about this kind of discussion?
Yes, thank you, Jaslyn. I think the narration of climate change, since the urgency is really high, like people nowadays not only call it climate change, but climate crisis. It's already turned into a crisis that all of us have to take actions to do something about it, so it's not going to destroy our future and our maybe grandchild future. So climate change can cause more frequent and intense drought, storm, heat waves, rising sea levels as we know it, because like nowadays people are saying that Jakarta is going to sink, and the melting glacier and warming ocean that can directly harm animals in the oceans, harming the corals, and then it can also decrease the fish on the sea because the ocean acidity is increasing, and that it can also impact the livelihood of the human when they can no longer depend on the fish and the ocean. So it can also destroy the place we live and wreak havoc on people's livelihood and communities. So climate change can also affect our health, our ability to grow food, because the one that got destroyed by the climate change is not only the oceans and not only the air, but it's also our soils and also our water. It can also disturb our safety, and our ability to get a job and do it while doing our work. So some of us are already more vulnerable to climate change, such as people living in the small islands and the small nations, and also other developing countries. So conditions like sea level rise and saltwater intrusion have advanced to the point where the whole community had to relocate, and protracted drought are putting people at risk of famine. So in the future, the number of climate refugees is expected to rise. So basically, climate change impacts human livelihood, human health, economy, and also disturb the biodiversity and the natural ecosystem.
Okay, thank you. So from your explanation, we can see clearly how big of an impact climate change, or we can say climate crisis, has. But
Yes.
in your opinion, even though like we are going to face so many big impacts in our future, is there enough awareness being raised against this climate crisis in the current status quo?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So as we can already see that the impact is huge, and like everyone can get affected by these issues, the climate crisis. So like I mentioned before, almost 90% of the world believe climate change is real. That means there are about 10% of the world that didn't believe that climate change is happening. But climate change that has turned into climate crisis is a big issue that will threaten our future. At this point, we might not be able to, we not be the people affected directly by this threat. Maybe when you live in the city, you cannot see directly where some places are flooded, or where coastal line are getting closer to the communities, to the houses, or when the coastal floods are happening. Maybe it's not. Maybe you're not the people who are affected directly by this threat. But in the next decades, if we did not address these issues now, it will be too late to reverse the effect of the climate change. And at the point, probably our grandchild will face the consequences. Regarding the awareness that you mentioned, I think all the information is only like one click away on the internet. And a lot of organizations also constantly educating and sharing information at this moment. So it is really up to us to educate ourselves on how to tackle this crisis. Like everything is already there. Like the information is already available. It's just like, do you care about it enough to learn about it more, or to take action to prevent the climate crisis on happening any further? It's up to you. And I think the awareness is quite good, since we can see the movements regarding the climate crisis, be it from citizens, government, and even big corporations. As you can see nowadays, there are more movement regarding pollutions and also climate crisis and also carbon awareness almost everywhere, even in Indonesia itself. But how we can apply what we know itself is a different matter than those awareness that we have. That's Jesslyn.
Okay. I actually agree with what you say that we already see so many information these days, but I want to know from your perspective, because I've seen that in your career, you're dealing with the nature, you're seeing it with your own eyes, directly. What actions has been taken to tackle the impact of climate change that you know? Can you share more about it?
Yeah. So to share more about my experience before, so I've been working on the mangrove is also useful to help with the sea level rise, to defend the small islands. From that time, I see some issues that's happening during my time in the field, and I think that many climate change solutions can deliver economic benefit while improving our lives and protecting the environment. So, when dealing with communities, we cannot bring the narration of the climate is changing. You have to do something to the fishermen, to the people who live directly, whose livelihood are depending on the environment. We cannot just say that stop those harmful activity. We cannot, but we have to bring another solution that can give them alternative livelihood, so they don't destroy the coastal, for example, or alternative income, so then they don't destroy the forest to further drive the climate crisis. We also have the global framework and agreement to guide process, such as maybe you heard the Sustainable Development Goals, or the SDGs, that is been implemented by everyone, even companies, NGOs, even like youth activists also mentioning SDGs, the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change, and also the Paris Agreement. And the three broad categories of actions are cutting emissions, adapting to climate impacts, and climate financing. So, what action has been taken to tackle the impact of climate crisis? There have been action that have been done on a big level, such as switching energy system from fossil fuel to renewables like solar or wind, that will reduce emission that are the driving of the climate change. Also, there are companies like Shell and British Petroleum, or BP, that has already implemented nature-based solutions. So what is nature-based solutions? So nature-based solutions are actions that protect, sustainably manage, and restore natural or modified ecosystem to address the societal change. So they're basically doing things like planting trees, restoring forests, restoring coastal, or like transplanting coral reefs as their solution to fight the climate crisis. Those nature-based solutions can provide a wide range of environmental, social, and economic benefits, and are indispensable for both climate mitigation and adaptation. Also, the carbon tax and offset narration is also on the go now. So this is also one of the actions that has been taken by our government, like how Indonesia is currently implementing result-based payment that is supported by the World Bank. So the result-based payment is for Indonesian government to preserve carbon stock in the existing forests, so that can prevent the leaking more, the releasing of more carbons to the atmosphere that will drive the climate crisis like further. And some giant corporations like Danone also been aware about plastic pollutions and has been taking actions to reduce the pollution while preserving water in the project area.
Okay, that's very nice to hear. It's very nice to hear that there's so many company that has started to actually act on this climate change. But I have a question regarding the data that you have already presented about there are people who actually believe about climate crisis and there are people who are actually doubting about its presence. But I heard that I think Joe Biden has said that when we're dealing with climate change, it needs to be a collective measure. And maybe from your opinion, may I ask about how do we actually approach the people who are who don't believe clearly about how climate change will affect us in the future?
Yeah. So I did some reading recently regarding these topics, and I was super curious on like why like 10% of the population don't believe that climate change is happening. So like the numbers mentioned before, I think the 10% probably who doesn't believe it, like some of them believe that it's naturally happened, so then we don't have to worry. That's why they don't really take action. They don't really take actions, because before, during my university days, it's also like I heard like my lecturer also say that the ozone, the holes in the ozone layer is something that naturally happens, and at some point it will close itself, and then at some point, another point, it will happen again, and then it will close again. But the fact is that at that time, maybe like decades ago, they don't burn fossil fuels like we are now, and probably those natural thing might happen, but because of now the gases that are released, the greenhouse gases that are released are more into the atmosphere. Like we have to open our eyes that these things is happening. But the other probably the other half of the 10% of the population, some of them are believing about conspirations, and sometimes there's nothing we can do to people who believe in conservation. What we can do is keep educating, and then don't wait for those 10% to open their eyes. Do what we can do now. Take action now. Like take people around you to take action with you, and don't put those 10% as our priority. We have this 90% of people that will do something that will probably in the future like also save those 10%. So yeah, that's my opinion on those.
Okay, thank you. So it has been so obvious that with the problem that we have at hand, we need to take action, right? So one of the action that we know is called climate empowerment. But can you give us a clear picturization about what and how we actually do climate empowerment?
Okay. So wait. So climate empowerment. So as you mentioned in the title of this talk, the action on climate empowerment. So this term is adopted by United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, or UNFCCC. So based on the future pathway for action for climate empowerment written by the University of Wageningen that I recently read. So the Action for Climate Empowerment, or ACE, refers to Article 6 of the Convention on Climate Change and Article 12 of the Paris Agreement. So it provides a legal basis to foster climate education, training, public awareness, public participation, and public access to information. So the overarching goals of ACE is to empower all members of society to engage in climate action through those 6 pillars that I mentioned before. So engagement in these pillars should lead to a transition to a low emission and climate resilient world, the ultimate objective of the UNFCCC. So ACE calls on governments to develop and implement educational and public awareness program, train scientific, technical, and managerial personnel in the field in different countries, also foster access to information, and promote public participation in addressing climate change and its effects. The ACE, Action on Climate Empowerment, also urges countries to cooperate in this process by exchanging good practices and lesson learned, and strengthening national institutions in different countries. So this wide scope of activities is guided by specific objectives that together are seen as crucial for effective implementing climate adaptation and mitigation actions. So basically, ACE, the term that we use in the title of this talk, is a model adapted and used by the UNFCCC to create low emission and climate resilient world. And how can we achieve this climate empowerment? So all I can say is that it's all mentioned on the 6 pillars that Ace mentioned before, which is education, training, public awareness, public participation, public access to information, and international cooperation. So you can always educate yourself, like what you're doing now, attending talks, read more articles, read more surveys, and then learn about what change you should make to support the climate actions and climate empowerment. Educate people around you, participating in training to equip yourself with new skills based on your background. It doesn't have to be, related to conservation. It doesn't have to be related to carbon. You can just hone your skills related on your background on, like, for example, arts. As an artist, what can you do to help with the climate action? How you can help with the climate empowerment, and you can also participate in public actions. Use your voice to change the policy. Use your voice as a consumers to affect the big corporations. And if you want and have passions in it, you can work in the sector to promote the climate actions and cooperations, maybe between organizations, maybe between different stakeholders like policymakers, corporations, communities, or even international cooperation. That's what I thought about what we can do about climate empowerment to save our future.
Okay, thank you so much. That's very eye-opening. But maybe next, to actually just give a clearer characterization, can you give us an elaboration about the best and worst case scenario, about why we have to take action to tackle this climate crisis, and what will happen if we stay in the status quo without actually taking a step forward?
Yeah, okay. So maybe like all of you know, like the talk about climate change, climate crisis, and climate actions, probably like a lot of people already know the solutions. Like the solution is there. What we need to change is there. It's like we know, probably some of us know what we need to change, but it's quite expensive. The climate actions, like on a big scale, that can make a big difference. Probably it's quite expensive for developing countries, but we can pay the bill now, pay dearly in the future with more and more probably impact on our life and economical condition. So climate action requires significant financial investment by government and businesses. That's why probably it's a bit slower than what we hope for. But climate inaction is obviously vastly more expensive. So why we have to take actions to tackle climate change, and what will happen if we don't take actions. So WWF published an article about the 10 reasons we should care about climate actions. And I'm probably going to mention 2 of them. So yeah, the first one is because we all need clean water. Imagine if you don't have clean water for your drinks or like for daily necessities. Imagine if the water is murky, or even if it's salty when you live in a small island and you cannot enjoy the fresh water anymore. So climate change affects rainfall patterns. Like we see now, probably like it's raining every day here now in East Borneo, and it's probably not something that should be happening at this time of the year, probably. And these rainfall patterns that are affected by the climate change, meaning both drought and flooding will be more common and more intense. Um, you know that two or three in every three people in the worldwide live in regions of severe water scarcity. Even a small increase in global temperature will destabilize the water cycle and could make water scarcity much worse. So, for example, in the central Borneo where I worked last year, um, like one of the village are impacted by the climate change. So usually there's no like the flood is maybe reach your ankle, but this I think this last year or something like the flood almost reached the roof, so they all have to be relocated to another village, not just another house but another village because of those floods that happens. And then the second thing that why we need to take action is because we all deserve air. So with anthropogenic emissions to the atmosphere, mm, this the polluted air affects humans' health, especially children, because they are probably more fragile than the adults. So air pollution can lead to asthma, heart, and lung disease. Maybe you realize that how air quality in some city in Indonesia have come to unhealthy level. Probably in Jakarta now, some of my friends have those. What is it? The one who measure the quality of the air, and then when she posted picture of those device, the number are like on a concerning level about the water quality. So if we don't take actions, in a few decades, probably the planet will be probably increasingly inhospitable to humans. You know, with all the disaster, with all the losing of natural resources, and we don't know how habitable like Indonesia or other countries will be in like 2100. No one knows what the future holds for our children and grandchildren. Like more moisture in the airs and higher sea surface temperature have caused a surge in extreme hurricane and the tropical storms. So coastal cities have suffered brutal infrastructure destructions and extreme flooding, you know, the coastal flooding, and then it kills thousands of people and probably displacing millions of people that they have to move from the original home, the original house, because the sea water already reached their porch or already invaded their house. So every day, because of rising water level, some of the world must evacuate to higher grounds. You can see images of mothers with um, babies, probably in the those footage of floods or of disaster in the world or even in Indonesia. They're wading through flood waters, like rescuing their families, rescuing their belongings, and then news about people living in houses with waters. As you can see, probably the closest to people in Jakarta is probably Muara Angke and Thousand Islands. How the coastal floods like happens more frequently than in the last few years, and they have to do something to prevent that to happen. So those who remain on the coast must witness the demise of a way of a life based on fishing. And because the oceans have absorbed carbon dioxide, the water has become more acidic and is now hostile to marine life. But a few countries have been fishing even in the international water. So with the acidity of the, like I mentioned before, the acidity of the ocean increase, like the living, the coral will get destroyed, and other like fishes not to be as abundant as maybe a few decades ago. That's why like fishermen will lose their livelihood probably, and then it's getting harder for people to survive because of things that happens to their resource of income and their place and their home.
Okay, we can clearly see that climate crisis is really urgent and climate empowerment is very important, that we need to achieve it. But I would like to ask for your opinion, for your advice as well for all of us here. So we say that we hear a lot that, okay, government, they have a lot of authority, they have a lot of power, they have a lot of resources to actually do something, do concrete things. But what about students? What about young people, youth out there who has the this eagerness to actually achieve climate empowerment, but they are actually confused about what to do? Do you have any advice for them?
Yeah, I think it's very fascinating how like people of different ages have this um, drive to combat the climate crisis and do something and to support the climate actions. So yeah, like you mentioned, climate change is not a problem that governments can solve alone. So we need collaboration across regional government, businesses, and communities as well. We also need to help the wildlife and people cope with rapidly warming planet. Like obviously, big things such as changing customer mindset, sustainability action from big corporations, government policy are important to tackle these issues. But I think like all of us don't have to do all these things to make an impact. Simply doing something in our capacity, such as again educating our staff, educating people around us, and be aware that everything that we do leave a carbon footprint that will drive the climate crisis even further and faster. That is why we have to be mindful about what we eat, like how we travel and how we use natural resources. Changing how industries work doesn't sound like anything we can influence, and as maybe like students or someone who doesn't have hold powers in the government probably. But I think we definitely can do that, because us as individual, be it like people of young age or students, us as individuals need to exercise our rights, both as citizens and as consumers. Because experts say that putting pressures on governments and on companies to make the system changes are needed. For example, if we like one company are using animal subject, and then the protests of the consumers can change the company policy, can change the company operational standard. And then if we want to do something for a corporation to reduce their pollutions, to do offset, to do restorations, or do something for the community to help them adapt and to mitigate the climate change, we can definitely use our voice and our rights as humans, as citizens that have the rights to live in the healthy countries and world.
Okay, thank you so much. So, as I see a lot on the internet that there are so many solutions for reducing the climate change step by step. But like in our daily life, we do a lot of activities, right? And in your opinion, what do you think is the most crucial thing that we need to change to make a big impact for this climate empowerment? What is like the most crucial thing in our daily activities that needs to be changed?
Yeah, sure. So, like I mentioned before, that everything that we do leave carbon footprints, but there are probably two things that leave the biggest impact. The first one is definitely travel, like using like our own vehicle instead of using public transport. And there are lots of people, for example, using motorcycle, even it's only going across the street or like somewhere close. So be mindful that the like burning fossil fuels by like using those motorcycle or cars by yourself, like not using public transport to reduce it. It gives like it's impacted. It gives a huge carbon footprint. It leaves a huge carbon footprint, and it's going to drive the climate crisis further. And that's why you need to be mindful about how you travel. The reason if the why you travel, like for example, if it's not really necessary, maybe we can use it. Maybe we can use a Zoom call, even though it's also produce carbon, but it's less carbon than when you are travel maybe by plane or by your own car for 12 hours straight to another city or something. And then the second one, so relating to energy, is how we use electricity. So currently I live in the East Borneo, and I see massive amount of coal that are transported every day. And a few weeks ago, maybe you all heard about the crisis on coal, that the government like banned the import of the coal because of the energy crisis in Indonesia, but it only happens for maybe a week. The ban only happened for a week, but it shows that like Indonesia's energy is still relying heavily on coal. That's why we need to be mindful on how we use electricity at our house or wherever we are. And then maybe like unplug your charger when you're not using it. You know, those kind of small things that probably you think it doesn't matter if it's only 1% of doing it, but imagine if the whole world are imagine if people in Indonesia, like just make it smaller, in Indonesia are mindful about those things. Probably like we can reduce the amount of coals that are burned in the for our electricity. And also there's a third one that people keep mentioning about be mindful on what we eat, because livestock or like raising animals, it releases like a lot of methane gases, and then the changing land use from forest to agricultural use, and also cause deforestation, and then less trees are like cutting more trees. But it's also like your choice. Maybe you don't have to like not eat dairy at all or meat at all and be vegan, but as long as you are mindful about your food and then don't waste food, and then eat only what you need instead of having a feast that are of and then you will throw away the food later, and it will cause like more pollutions and then more trash to pile up. So like I think everything is okay. I mean, it's not like you have to stop doing what you used to do. It's just be aware and be mindful that it's impacting our environment, and do what is necessary, and don't do too much on something that can harm the environment. But it's not like you have to stop it. Just be mindful.
Okay, thank you so much for the solutions. I would like to ask for your opinion. Maybe this is to actually create a better picture about the solutions that we need to do and the urgency of the problem that we have. We already have a clock in New York that actually counting down the time until the climate change itself is irreversible.
Yes.
Yeah, and I think that's a very good reminder. But I want to know what you think, and about from what I know, a lot of people are already saying, oh, I think we are too late, or I think it might be redundant. But what do you think about the times that we have? Do you think it's enough? And what kind of measures that we need to take to make it an enough time for us to take action?
Yeah. Regarding the time, so there's things that happens during my time working with mangroves. So there are certain areas that people say that, oh, this is too late if we plant in this area, and then some people just just giving up on that area and just do restoration probably in other area, and probably neglected the natural restorations that can happen in the area and just decide on the artificial one. So probably it's almost the same like climate crisis. Yeah, some people believe that we still have time. Some people believe that it's already too late, and some people believe that well, it's not happening. Why are you like wasting money on things that are not happening? There are like a lot of thought about it. I think personally think that like different opinions, like saying that there are enough times or there are not enough times on something. As long as, for me personally, as long as I see, then it's better to do something than not doing anything at all. The time in the Times Square is probably just a reminder for people that we can still take action. Therefore, take action, please. So even though maybe it's irreversible, probably like it's already too late. But if we are doing something now, maybe the impact, even though it's already too late, it's not going to be as a high scale as it probably will happen if we don't take actions, if it makes sense. So, for example, if it's too late now and then nothing we did can change what happens probably in the future, but probably even though it doesn't change, maybe the impact will not be as huge as if we don't take actions. So that's what I personally think about the times, and then if what we can do about that. And does that answer your question, or is there something that I missed?
Yes, I think that answers my question, and I do agree about how we actually need to do something other than just giving up about the current condition. But I want to know about, we have talked about, okay, the future generations, they are going to inherit this planet, but on the current status quo, who are the people that are the most vulnerable actors in this climate crisis that would be the most affected if we don't act on it?
Yeah. So in the future, like eventually the climate crisis will impact like people on different levels. But I think the most vulnerable people are the communities, that deals with the local disasters. So, for example, like when you live in big cities, when people have money, when people have access to different kind of privilege that can make their life easier, then probably the impact of the climate change, they don't feel it directly, or they don't even feel it. But people who live on the grassroots level, on the communities, they will be the first one to feel the impact. Like, for example, like I mentioned before, in the Thousand Island, I think in Harapan Island, so the fresh water is already the salt, the seawater intrusions already happened. So like the water in the whole island is salty. So they have to buy like fresh water somewhere else to provide, the freshwater needs for their body and for their family. They have to spend extra money to buy that. And then also, for example, another people that got affected is when I work in the pitland in the central Borneo. Maybe people in Jakarta doesn't, or like people in Java doesn't feel the effect of the forest fire in Borneo. But at that time, the drought is so long that the fires happens in the forest, and like the whole city was covered in smoke, and even people have to relocate to other cities, and they have to spend money, to buy like masks, and then to save the water, because they cannot get enough water in the village near the burning area. And then also, like, some people have to go to fight the fire and then put the fire down, and then it's quite dangerous, and then they just have to stay the night on the side just to make sure that the fire doesn't reach the village and their family are safe. Because kind of things, maybe we don't feel it directly in the cities, or even if we have money, but people whose livelihood or whose home is close to the area impacted by the climate crisis will be the first one to suffer. And then, it's also up to us to help to prevent that to happen. So in a lot of places, because sometimes some of them are like helpless, like, and some of them already aware of what they need to do because of people comes and like raise their awareness, educating, so those kind of things not happening again.
Okay, thank you so much for the answer. So going into the last section, which I think is very interesting because I've actually thought about this in geography in high school, which is about sustainable energy courses. And especially because when we're talking about combating climate change, we're talking about the involvement of technologies. And with us currently living in a very technological era, a lot of youth are interested in going into scientific field, engineering field. And we know that we have sustainable energy and green power, as we know, like solar and wind power. Can you actually explain to us more regarding sustainable energy, and is it effective or not?
Yeah. So it's also like a growing narration, right? The sustainable energy. I think the energy sector is very sexy nowadays. A lot of people are interested. A lot of funding goes into those sectors, and I think it will be beneficial if more people, like more young people in Indonesia, are interested on those. So then they can grow it on the on the scale that are achievable. Because sometimes, because what I see is like, we know that this narration of like the goods of the sustainable energy, the goods of the clean energy, but the implementation is quite expensive because people with the knowledge are not as much as probably people with the knowledge of oil and gases. So to have those passions is very good and will be benefiting with the energy sectors in the future. And based on my research, the energy sector can cut greenhouse gas emission. If we implement the clean energy, it can cut the greenhouse gas emission by 12.5 gigatons annually. So it's a huge number if we are able to change to the cleaner energy. And humanity does not need to wait for new inventions. Probably, like, it has the technology to deliver these huge reductions by transitioning to renewable energy and being more efficient with the power consumes. So I think it's one of the way we can tackle this climate crisis, and then it's very good with more on this energy sector. Hopefully, Indonesia can also implement the clean air in the future when the funding is available.
Okay, so because like it is inevitable that we need to bring up about the youth and education sectors.
Yes.
So I'm quite curious about what do you think about maybe the involvement of universities or school? What can they do to actually support climate empowerment and maybe support the stimulation of implementing a bit of maybe knowledge regarding sustainable energy inside of the students' mind? What do you think about that, and how do they actually support climate empowerment?
Yeah, I think the educational organizations such as university will play a really huge roles in this. Like when I was like, my major is biology, so it's obvious that during the university days, like, I learn about climate, I learn about biodiversity. But what about the probably other major that are not related directly to the the climate actions or the climate empowerment narrations? I think the university could play a big role, but by probably providing the expert, because I'm sure that they have experts on climate action, and then probably what is it like make this kind of knowledge sharing, this kind of trainings, and then to make more probably internship or research available with cross sectoral, so they can because university consists of many majors, so they can make this activity of cross sector cross major activity, where people from different major, maybe biology, forestry, maybe one business, and then history and other major, they can work together on how different sectors can work together on achieving this climate actions and climate empowerment. I think they can play a huge role, since they have big influence, they have big networks, not only national level, regional level, but also international level. So if probably if there's a competitions internally in university, or maybe cross university, that can happen to to spark those curiosity on how each different sectors can work together to make an impact, that will be very interesting, instead of just just normal well, webinars is obviously it's very it's very useful, but just making actions with their power and their influence, it can also give a bigger impact, what I personally think.
Okay, thank you so much. So just for the last question, maybe this is not a question, but maybe a request. Do you have any messages that you want to relay to the passionate youngsters here regarding how to actually preserve our earth and save our future?
Yeah. So so I already told you, I hope that it's going to be useful, and then at least like once you find one thing that you can do to tackle this climate crisis and join on the climate actions. So what I want to tell you guys are that we are part of the solutions. Don't ever think that, oh, we are too young, or we are not powerful enough, or we don't have the resources. But just know this, that we are part of the solutions. Like without us, probably there'll be no future. Without us educating ourselves, without us taking actions, there are probably bigger impacts on from the climate crisis. So since we are part of the solution, let's do something, even though it's small. Just do something in our capacity. You don't have to be someone else. You don't have to be a scientist. You don't have to be a professional. You just have to be yourself with your skill and with what you are best to do, to be part of the solutions and work together to achieve this climate empowerment. And yeah, also we can fight the climate change by equipping ourselves with knowledge, and be aware again that our everyday actions is leaving carbon footprint. That's Jesslyn, thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much for your answers for all the questions. It has been such an interesting session, and I will never be able to say anything to sell it short. I hope all of us here today not only learn about climate change and climate empowerment, but will also implement the things that we have learned today. And before we are going to the next fun section, which is the Q&A session, I believe that our magnificent speaker has a closing statement that she would like to present. So the floor is yours, Mrs. Eka.
Yeah, thank you, Jesslyn. So, like Jesslyn mentioned before, I'm part of Himba Raya Indonesia. So, it is like a small movement that I made with my friend, because we see that a lot of people like some people on our project area in central Borneo are losing their livelihood due to the COVID-19. So what we want to do is we want to educate the people there about firefighting, and then how we can restore the ex-burning area of of a peat swamp forest in the central Borneo. And we just got support from Global Landscape Forum and get our first grant to do a restoration and education activity. So I hope that you can support us and then follow our journey in Global Landscape Forum website, and also follow our Instagram that will we will do activity soon before the mid of this year. So hope you can support our project in Central Borneo to restore the peat swamp. Thank you, Jocelyn, for
Thank you so much. And now we will move on to the session that a lot of you have been waiting for, which is the question and answer session. You can write it down on the live chat and just send it, or you can raise the hand button and raise it and unmute yourself after I call your name. So if you have any questions that you want to raise, please raise your hand button or just click it on the live section. We have time for several questions. So if any of you have questions regarding the climate change or climate empowerment or maybe sustainable energy and every other factor that actually impact the climate change and climate empowerment, you can ask it. Okay, so we have Duri Saripati Natasha. Thank you for raising your hand, and you are allowed to put your mic on and ask your question. Wei.
Okay, hello. Can you hear my voice? Okay, I'm sorry if it's kind of loud. I was outside. Actually, I kind of want to ask about the climate change today. I mean, like nowadays we know that climate change are rising, and it's kind of hard for us. And actually, I'm that part of 90% people who recognize that climate change are rising. Especially in Indonesia, I kind of feel like it's actually stable weather. And what I want to ask is there any a capability of all the nations that gonna cooperate together again, making organizations like UNCCC to cooperate together to make it easier to us defending this climate change that happens in our nations. That's all my questions, and thank you for hearing. I'm sorry for the loud noise.
Thank you so much for the question. Mrs. Eka, you are about to answer now.
Yeah, sorry. So if I'm going to repeat the question so that I'm not misunderstood. So the question is about if is there any organizations in Indonesian like government structure that have the same functions as the UNFCCC? Is it?
Well, actually, it's not only in Indonesia. I mean, like all the nation in this world. Like, when the first time all the international world recognized about that environment issues, they gather up and then they build such an organization like UNSCCC. And maybe is there any capability that nations are gonna recognize again about that climate change that are rising, and maybe they're gonna get up again, we can make another organizations and then cooperate together to like defeat this climate change that are rising in all of the countries and all nations in this world. That's my questions. Yeah, understand.
Okay, I see. So, as far as I know, so there's maybe the COP26 and then Paris agreements. Those kind of events are meant to gather all nations around and then discuss the issues and what things that they can do to fight the climate actions, to fight the climate crisis. Like one of the result of those meetings and of those gatherings of different countries are, the SDGs and then also the ACE, the Action on Climate Empowerment. So as far as I know, I only know those events where countries gather, but maybe like different countries have their own organizations. As in Indonesia, there are the committee on, so there is ICCTF, if I'm not mistaken. So it's Indonesia Climate Change Trust Fund. Um, it's I think it's a governmental. It's also one from the government where they fund activities that can combat climate change, such as restoring wetlands and then restoring forests and etc. And also, I forget the name, but there is this from the ministry in Indonesia. They have committee on to combat the climate, but I forget the name. But there's also one in the East Borneo because they just recently got funding for to combat climate by preserving the carbon in the forest. It's LDGPI, something like that. So they those kind of organizations are the main the organization that organize the movement of our countries to fight the climate crisis. So that's as far as I know, but I'll do more research, and we can all do more research about that to know more about this kind of movement or organizations that are happening in the world to combat climate change. But also the NGOs, the non-governmental organizations. There are many of that in Indonesia, and they're also one of the what is it, like give a huge impact also on this climate movement, I think. Thank you, Duri.
Well, thank you for your answer. It kind of helped me for my works, and that's all. Thank you.
Thank you so much for the questions, Duri, and thank you so much for the answer, Kak Eka. So we have one question in the comment that was given to me by private chat. So the question is that we know that we are currently taking an action so the climate change wouldn't further worsen in the future, but how do we actually help the people who are already affected by the climate change? Is there a practical work that we can actually do for them?
So, like going directly helping the communities, right?
Yes.
Well, well, I can speak as since I'm working a lot in different NGOs. So, different NGOs have different projects that support the community, like directly on the like on the spot, like in the villages, and then like equipping themselves or just like developing this program that can help them adapt on the crises that are coming to their locations. But so that's as an organization, as an organization, we can find grants, we can find funding, donors, even though it's NGO, startup, or other movement, we can like find funding and then support and then work together with the local communities to find the best solutions that they needed, not just us thinking that, oh, this is the solution for your problem, please do this. No, but working together with the communities to develop the solutions that can be implemented, and then something that is useful for the local communities. But as an individual, I think if you have passions, if you have the drive or you have the time, some of my friends who work in corporate and doesn't work in NGOs who work directly with the local government, they can support by so sometimes they just visit the location and then talk with the locals, and then make the voice of the locals heard. You can be the advocate. You can just bring yourself and be yourself and be present with them, and then listen and what they need probably, and what are their problem. And if you can advocate that, you can speak their truth. You can share their experience, so that the maybe the world knows, like the other part of the communities knows what's their problem, and probably um, so that they can, maybe people with the best project can approach them. Like some of my friends also, they they make a proposals to a company like in Jakarta, so they can do coral transplantations in those area, and then the company agree, and then they do coral transplantation on the area, because of the, the coastal flood that happens frequently in this area. And then the coral transplantation happens, and then the local community got their coral restored, their island protected, and then the people also get an income from those activities. So you don't have to have the money, but we have our voices that we can use. And probably the locals don't have access to social media, but we have access to social media. I think that's things that we can do that will make a difference. It might not big in the beginning, but if we're consistent with what we are doing, and then if we are sincere on approaching the locals, on like having these feelings of really wanted to help them, I think eventually it will, like, your voice will reach the will reach the world, and might help might come sooner for those people in the local community, from your help first.
Thank you so much for the answer. So we are opening questions for two more. So if any of the participants have any question to us, please use the raise hand button. And also you can chat it on the live chat. Okay, so we have one question in the live chat that has been raised. So the question is that how is climate change actually affecting farmers and our food supply? Can you explain that? Thank you for the questions. So for Mrs. Eka, the floor is yours.
Sorry, I'm muted. So yeah. So like for example, like we know that some like agriculture, or like some farm needs the stable weather conditions, because they have this harvest time, they have this time where they need to plant, and there are some kind of some kind of things that they have to do to nurture the plants. So because of the climate crisis that happens, those natural cycles that usually happens, stably, like happen like every year at the same time, probably in the same month, and then where the farmers can predict it. But because of the climate crisis, the water supplies are scarce. The areas affected by drought, there's no water that the crops can consume, and then the rain doesn't come as predicted, and then those prolonged droughts or even floods, because some crops are very sensitive to the water level they consume. So they can they cannot grow as healthy as they normally would if there is no like drought or there's no flooded. Because like even when we plant trees, like if the location are constantly flooded or when the location are constantly dry, the trees are not going to grow well. And also as we may know, like the plants need the insects, the plants need the bees to pollinate, and then so they can produce fruits or other things. And because of the climate actions, there are probably more their food sources of those insects are affected. Those the population can also reduce, and then because of that, there is no proper pollination. So it can happen because of the water. It can happen because of the weather. It can also happen because of the biodiversity supposedly supporting those crops are not well because of the climate conditions. So that's probably all I can say. But if you are interested more on how our soil and our soil impacted by the climate crisis, you can watch the movie in Netflix. I think it's called Kiss the Ground. I think they are talking more about the soils and the ground, and then things related to those.
Thank you so much for the answer, and thank you so much for the movie recommendation. It's really nice to actually see something other than just dramas and romance. And we have there's one person who asked two questions. So first is regarding what are your opinions regarding nuclear power as a renewable energy? And second, how do we actually realistically do, and or maybe just what can we do to get off fossil fuels energy as soon as possible?
Okay.
Thank you so much for the answer. And Ms. Eka, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you. So regarding nuclear power as renewable energy sources, I think I don't have enough knowledge on that to answer. I don't want to give the wrong answer, but since I don't have enough knowledge and capacity to answer that, probably after this I will read some more about those information, because it also piqued my interest also. But for now, I don't have the capacity. But regarding how we can get off the fossil fuel, as soon as possible. I think in my opinion, this is my personal opinion. Like for now, like as soon as possible. Like I don't know the timeline, because we are still relying like heavily on coals and the oil and gas, I think. So we cannot just in the next decades, those will what's it like? We won't need this anymore, because I think what we need to do as a nation probably, or because it's the level of like a huge level, not like individual level. Probably one is to have the proper human resources, like people with the capacity to implement those renewable energy, those green technology for us to use. And then second one will be the funding, because it will be expensive for the first time, even though it says that it will reduce the it will not be like as expensive as the time goes. And I think what was it? I was thinking about it before. So yeah, the transition is needed, and then the human resources, and then the money, and then there's the plan and the commitment also. Because why people use fossil fuel? Because it's cheaper than maybe other resources, and we have plenty of it. Here again in East Borneo, I saw like huge coal mine, and it's probably not going to be stopped. The practice might still be going on for another 10 to 20 years. So we still have it. So it takes like commitments and plans to for us to to implement a new energy, a new energy, a cleaner energy in the future. Yeah, that's my opinion.
Thank you so much for the answer. I'm sure many of you have more questions for our amazing speaker, and especially because the topic is very interesting. However, due to time constraints, we must end the question and answer session. I would like to remind you that the giveaway will be closing right after this webinar. So to win these tickets, you must share your Instagram story during this talk show and tag at Global Millennial Group and at Global Millennial MUN. Then take the screenshot proof and submit it to the form that is already given. And the 5 lucky winners will be announced after this session ends in the Telegram group. Now we will present a certificate for Mrs. Eka Cahyaningrum as a token of appreciation and honor. And for you who are interested regarding Himba Raya Indonesia, you can also follow the Instagram that has been given in the comment section by Kak Eka. I would like to give the place for the operator to handle the certification session. So the operator, the floor is yours. Okay, to actually capture this very incredible moment, please allow me to do a countdown. The photo will be taken by the meeting host. So 1, 2, 3. Thank you so much. And now we are going to have a photo session together with all of the participants. And to all the participants, please do turn on your camera so we can capture your faces, and the photo will be taken by the meeting host. So for the participants, we are asking you to turn on your camera. Thank you so much for those who are already turning on their cameras.
Recording stopped.
Okay, the photo will be taken in 3, 2, 1. Please do hold your position since we have 5 pages to screenshot. But okay, for the next slide, 3, 2, 1. Okay, so the other side. 3, 2, 1. Okay, thank you so much for opening your camera. The photo session has ended. Okay, well, now we are at the end of this talk show. And I want to thank our magnificent speaker, Ms. Eka Cahyaningrum, for giving outstanding and thought-provoking and insightful answers. It was such an honor to be able to discuss the topic of action for climate empowerment with you, as well as learn a lot from your experience and your statements. I would also like to thank all of the participants here who have stayed through this talk show. We can only hope that this discussion has brought you insights that are highly informative and useful for us now and, of course, in the future, so we can all combat climate change together. We would also like to remind you to fill in the feedback form that has been shared in the chat. This will help us in learning more about what you would like to see from GMG in the future, from webinars in the future. And on behalf of Global Millennial team, I would like to apologize should there be any inconveniences or wrong wordings during today's webinars. And we cannot wait to see you in the next one. So thank you and see you soon. For the participants who are, for the participants, you are allowed to leave the meeting room. Thank you so much for the attendance today.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you so much, Kak.